Okay, so let me give you a little bit of an overview of the topics that we'll cover tonight. So I want to start by sharing with you a little bit in general about how compassion and psychedelics are related. And then I want to share with you more specifically the ways that we can train in compassion as well as self-compassion. And then in the last part, we'll look at some recent research on the connections of compassion, self-compassion, and psychedelics. Yeah. And so we have about an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah. We'll take a break in about an hour for 10 minutes so you can, do your thing. I'll also be offering some guided practices so that we can practice compassion together. Yeah. And I also want to leave enough time for question and answers. Yeah. So I have some slots in my slides that are allocated directly for question and answers. But if you misunderstand, if something I say is not clear, like please raise your hand. Yeah. Thanks to Phil for setting up the this possibility to also post your questions that we'll come back to at the end of today's talk. Okay. Yeah. So I feel very much in line with the values of the Psychedelic Society. So I'm also really curious about the healing potential of altered states, as probably many of you are here. So another line that connects us in this moment. And I'm also really curious about becoming more kind to myself and finding ways to deal with the suffering that I have as a human being in ways that are more healthy and constructive. Yeah. So maybe 10 years ago, I participated in this self-compassion training where for the first time in my life, I was asked to put a hand on my heart. Yeah. Just as I'm doing now, because, speaking in front of many people, makes you nervous, of course. And so I discovered that, simply placing a hand on my body is a really simple way of soothing myself. Yeah. So as I'm speaking here, I'm also bringing in my own sort of resources of self-compassion, some of which I'll be sharing with you today. I also have a little bit experience with psychedelic states. Of course, only outside of Austria in completely legal contexts. Yeah. I discovered that my self-compassion practices really helped me to navigate those experiences. And at the same time, the experiences that can be occasioned through psychedelics also really helped me to deepen my practice of self-compassion. Yeah, so very excited and happy that I get to share around these things with you here today. Since I'm guessing you're here because you're also interested in these kinds of experiences. And so let me start actually by welcoming you. Yeah. And so this is a little bit of a first practice. So I want to, on behalf of the team of the Psychedelic Society Vienna and myself, I really want to welcome you here. I want to welcome you in sort of a radical way. Yeah. So again, returning to our topic of connection. So our intention really for tonight is to make this space as safe as possible. Yeah. Knowing that there's no space on this earth that is completely possible, but this is our intention. And so if you feel comfortable, if you like to, while I'm reading this radical welcome, if you like to close your eyes, or you can also leave your eyes open and just kind of receive this being welcomed in this space. So we want to welcome everyone here in this space, all of your experiences and all of your identities. And we also want to welcome each person's ethical and racial background. Yeah, so the ways in which they define and shape each of us, and also the ways in which we may not be connected to those identities. We also welcome all nationalities and the wisdom of each of our traditions and ancestors. Welcome also to the many religions and faiths and forms of spirituality in this room. And also really our many questions and doubts and the search for answers. So know that all of that is welcome here. Welcome to our bodies, this unique container that each of us inhabits. And welcome to the many forms we show up in and the many abilities that we have and that we don't have. Welcome also to whatever age our bodies may be. So all ages are welcome here. And welcome to our gender expressions and the diverse ways that each of us expresses sexuality. These too are welcome here. A warm welcome to our minds and intellects and the many ways that our minds and intellects express themselves. Welcome to all the identities that have been named and the many more that still need to be named. Welcome also to the meaning and the strength that arises from our identities, and also the pain that many of us have suffered because of their identities. And welcome to the parts of ourselves that find a home in our hearts, and also to the parts of ourselves that are still in hiding. And so welcome to all of our humanity. Welcome to the curiosity that brings you to this space tonight. Maybe welcome to your wish to change, and also to your wish not to change. Welcome to your innate capacity to be kind to yourself just as you are, as well as the struggles that may arise when you are kind to yourself. And so in the spirit of curiosity, humility, courage, safety, and respect, welcome to this space here tonight. And so now if you feel comfortable, you can have a look around, recognize each other, welcome each other silently in this room. Not forgetting to also welcome yourself in this room. Just as you are, if only for this one moment. So, we can ask, what does it feel like to be welcomed in this way? And how is that a contrast to the ways that we are welcomed or not welcomed in our lives, in the places that we work, in our families, in our societies? And so this is the context that we live in today. We live in a society that is focused on competition, right? Where, we have a very strong individual sense of self. Everyone's focused on him or herself. And so that leads to, this comparison, right? Am I better than this other person? How do we compare? And so when we compare ourselves, it leads to envy and maybe shame. Yeah, not feeling good enough. Yeah, or maybe we feel like we need to strive to become more and better. Or when we fail, we beat ourselves up, right? Yeah. And so, no wonder, no, today many of us have mental health issues. Yeah. We'll see that this tendency to self criticize really fuels a lot of the mental health challenges that people have today, like, forms of rumination, shame, depression, and anxiety. And so, no wonder it's not so easy for us to feel like we have a sense of self worth. Yeah. To extend love to ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, accept ourselves, yeah, maybe even have compassion to ourselves. So there's a little bit of the cultural context, though, that we're in. Yeah, so I'm thinking about Gabor Mate's recent book, Health and Illness in the Toxic Culture. And it's also, I think, what drives many of us to come here tonight, yeah, and to seek for connection and compassion and safety. And so we have time now, yeah, to explore this. And in particular, I'd like to explore with you how experiences of social safety, when we feel safe with each other, and experiences of connectedness can, yeah, help to shift from this competitive mindset to a more caring one. You know, and we'll see that this shift can be facilitated by both compassion training and also psychedelic states. And so when we shift to a more caring mindset, it means also that we have, we experience more social safety. We become safer people to be around. Maybe we seek out safer people to be with. We have a more of a compassionate motivation. So to be or to feel connected and to be helpful, not harmful. Maybe even pro-social behavior. Yeah, so maybe exhibiting a behavior that benefits others, not only ourselves. And so, again, compassion and psychedelics, they both have this capacity to help us repattern our minds so that it becomes more conductive to dealing with the suffering that we have as human beings and to promote well being. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because psychedelics have this capacity to really initiate experiences around empathy. They can lead to positive emotions. They can make our minds more flexible, more adaptable, and also increase a sense of connectedness. And at the same time, these capacities that are inherent in us that we can train, like mindfulness and self compassion, are found to be often the central outcomes in psychedelic therapy. You know? And so this sort of shows in a way that these two topics of compassion and psychedelics, they can be seen together and they maybe benefit from um, having a discussion or integrating them in some way. Yeah. So we can think about how psychedelics can assist us in our training of compassion, or also how we can prepare and navigate and integrate psychedelics experiences on the basis of compassion. So actually, most of the studies or most of the research on psychedelics often is not so much about the social contexts. No, it's usually about the way that psychedelics affect perception, maybe affect our self-awareness. Yeah, but it's increasingly clear that psychedelics also have the potential to affect our social behavior. Yeah. And one way that they might be doing this is by tapping into what's called the social safeness system. And I'll talk a little bit more about that pretty soon. Yeah, so we can ask, how do psychedelics do that? And in that we can look at two dimensions, both the subjective effects of psychedelics, so what they do to our mind, but also more the objective pharmacological changes that they affect in our brains. Yeah. And so, of course, with psychedelics, there's often a set and setting are playing really important role. So it's not so easy often to reduce them to, simple brain states that they target. One of the ways that psychedelics may lead to effects on social behavior is, and which is found in the nature of their experience, is the mystical experiences that they can occasion, especially on high doses. Yeah, where people have intense experiences of unity and connectedness, amongst others. And these experiences are found to lead to mood enhancements, right? So more positive emotions, also an increase in our connection to nature and the natural world. Yeah, and let me see here. Oops. Yeah, and so the sense of connectedness that can arise in the experience of unity also can have impacts on the way that we can regulate our emotions. Again, they can lead to more of a motivation to act in ways that are compassionate and kind. And also they can make us more open to our experience. One of the other ways that psychedelics can affect prosocial behavior is by changing the ways that we process our self-experience. Yeah, so we know that in experiences of unity, there are effects that are called like ego dissolution. So our usual sense of self is drastically altered. And this may be another way that compassion and psychedelics affect prosocial behavior. Okay, so this is a little bit of a sort of an overview of what I'd like to explore with you tonight. And I'd also like to explore these topics not only from a sort of a third person point of view, but also from a first person point of view. Yeah. And so I'd like to invite you into a short practice. Yeah. Around the feelings of being cared about. So before I give some guidance in these in this practice, I'd like to just note that some of the practices or the topics that I'll be presenting today, it can be a little bit emotionally activating, right? Because when we talk about compassion and the way that we relate to ourselves, yeah, it can bring, it can bring some stuff up. Yeah, maybe some old wounds of how we've been treated or how we've treated ourselves. So I'll do my best to guide them in a, let's say, a trauma informed way. Yeah, so to leave you choice and to, yeah, not overwhelm you by sort of long guidance, but so know that you're always in choice and that you can always disengage from the instruction. Yeah, you can adapt the instruction to maybe meet your own needs. Yeah. If you feel like you want to distract yourself, you can whip out your phone and check your Instagram feed, right? So no reason to overwhelm yourself here tonight. Yeah, but still, I'd like really to take this opportunity to explore a little bit with you these ways that we have of feeling cared for, feeling caring, and tapping into these really deep biological capacities that we have for a sense of connection. Yeah. So it'll be a little bit like microdosing compassion. Yeah. And if time allows, after the practices, I'd also like to leave maybe like room, maybe just for one or two people to report back, just so that we can, you know, stay engaged, right? Stay connected. Okay. So for this practice, it'll just be like maybe 5 minutes or so. So you can make yourself comfortable if you like, finding a comfortable position. So noticing how by finding a comfortable position, you're already actually caring for yourself. Yeah, probably the mind's quite busy with processing all the information you're hearing. So knowing that that's okay. And yeah, maybe just taking a few moments to ground yourself. Maybe you'd like to feel the feet on the floor or the contact with the chair or the cushion. If you like, you can also let the next exhalation be long and easy. Hmm. Maybe you'd just like to feel your breath for a few moments, how it flows in and out naturally. So, in your own way, just becoming present, nothing to do. And so, if you'd like to explore what it feels like to feel cared about, you can begin to bring to your mind someone that you know, and that person cares about you. So, maybe a person in your life from the past or from the present. It could also be a group of people. So maybe you have a friend who cares about you, or maybe a pet, or maybe some spiritual force or being. And so, in your own way, bringing someone to mind that you know cares about you. A relationship doesn't have to be perfect, but there is some aspect of that that is real in which you are truly cared about. And so letting this practice be simple and easy for you. And then as you bring this being or these beings to your mind, and see if you can begin to open to this feeling of what it's like to be cared about. So maybe this person makes you feel included or seen, or maybe with this person you feel appreciated or liked or even loved. So this experience may be mild, and that's okay. Maybe seeing if you can really explore what it feels like in your body to be cared about, to be cared for. If you like, you can also put a hand on your heart or maybe on your cheek. So almost as if the most caring being in the universe is caressing you in a loving way. So without any pressure to make anything happen, just exploring maybe what it's like to feel cared about. Sometimes what comes up for people is feeling not so cared about, and if that happens for you, it's okay, it's natural. So just acknowledging it and letting it pass away, and if you can, bringing your awareness back to these feelings of being cared about, maybe being seen, being respected. Yeah, and as you feel maybe even slightly cared about, you can let this experience sink into you so that you absorb it into yourself, so that it really lands. So, seeing if you can make some room inside yourself to really receive some of those aspects of feeling cared about. And then knowing that you can always come back to connecting with this being, connecting to feelings of being cared about, letting this practice go. Maybe letting the next exhalation be long and easy. Once again, feeling the contact with the floor or the chair or the cushion. And then when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes, and maybe you'd like to have a stretch or sip of your drink. Yeah, so this is one of the first flows of compassion that we can experience as human beings, receiving compassion from others. I just wonder maybe if one or two people will be willing to share maybe just a few words or sentences about their experience. And if not, it's also fine. We can go on with the presentation. I'd just be really curious how that was for you, including any challenges. Yeah, bitte.
I just wanted to say it's so interesting also worked with this for a long time and how it can change.
Mhm.
I mean, back with no self-compassion, and then suddenly it's allowed, it's there,
Mhm.
it's easy, and it's
Mm.
somehow,
Yeah.
normal.
Mhm. Mhm. Nice. Thank you. Yeah. So sometimes it's not so easy to feel cared about, right? Yeah. And then, oh, sorry. Yeah. I'll come to you in a moment. Yeah. So sometimes it's not so easy to feel cared about, right? And then when we notice that, we can also notice what happens next. Mm. Can we be with that experience and become curious about it? Maybe express some kindness to ourselves for that? Or is there a lot of self criticism about, could also be. And so what was just shared really opening a perspective that even if it's hard for us to feel cared about, it's something we can learn. Yeah. We can learn to open more. Yeah.
So I like to practice something kind of like this, like loving kindness.
Mhm.
That's meditation
Mhm.
quite regularly, and I would say it is quite helpful. And I think like I even heard like practicing it kind of it's almost like it brings about like an emotion like the opposite of anxiety.
Mhm. Mhm.
But actually this time I quite struggled with it because
Mhm.
maybe you could say like I think I may be like someone infatuated with someone.
Yeah.
And so I have like somewhat, maybe you could almost say like obsessive thoughts. And so it was a bit hard to find peace. And so
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of new for me. I'm just like wondering how
Mhm.
to cope with that.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll come back to that in our presentation about how these feelings of care can help us feel safer. Yeah. When we're anxious, no, anxiety is an emotion that tells us, hey, there's something going on here. I need to look out, right? Some threats, I need to maybe protect myself. Yeah. And how when we feel care or kindness towards ourselves, it can really help us to deal with those human emotions like anxiety. Yeah. And what I liked about your sharing is also you noted how it can change. So sometimes you feel safe, and then maybe now you're going through a different time in your life, and there's more like it feels different, yeah. And there's more, you notice more obsessive thinking. Yeah, interesting. Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, we'll go with one more person, then we'll come back to the presentation. Mhm.
It was about my dog. I know that he loves me for various reasons. And
what I was thinking about was, of course, first I was thinking about how much I love him as this exercise about feeling love.
Yeah.
It forced me to think about how much he actually loves himself in return.
Yeah.
And then thinking about how much he loves me in return also made me think about how much I love myself for loving him. And then it just sort of, there was this expectation of love.
Yeah.
Sort of back and forth, which I had really considered.
Yeah. Beautiful. So maybe that's what you're describing is this sense of connection now that can flow in different ways. Yeah. And actually, you're very clever because one of our next exercises will be about loving someone else, right? Caring for someone. Yeah. So that's another way that will flow. Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Mhm. Okay. So let's talk about some real basic things next. Huh? What are we actually talking about here? And maybe we can discuss this or, we'll see how it goes, but what is actually compassion? And how is it different from empathy, right? Anybody have any ideas or you want me to explain it to you or yeah, Phil.
Maybe empathy is just like the emotional and mental and perspective taking, compassion that offer like an action component to it, like really want to help, maybe.
Right. So are you saying that empathy is part of compassion? But yeah, right. Yeah. So when we talk about empathy, we can distinguish two types of empathy, emotional and cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy is like, I feel what you feel. And cognitive empathy is, I know what you feel. Right? So the I feel what you feel, like your dog might be able to feel what you feel. He'll probably not be able to know what you feel because we're more evolved than dogs, right? So in some ways. Yeah. So just to note, we have this capacity for empathy. And so it gives us this ability to pick up on other people's feelings. And there's a certain evolutionary background to that I'll go into on one of the next slides. Yeah. And then like Phil said, so compassion, it's interesting what happens when we feel what another person feels and that person is suffering. That person is experiencing loss or sadness or anxiety. Huh? I think we all know that experience. So we feel it too, right? So let's go first. So if we like that person that we feel with who is suffering, probably we would say, I feel compassion for that person, no? And so when we feel compassion for that person, it'll want to make us help. Yeah. So there is this concern, there's this motivation to help, which is part of compassion. Yeah. If I was a psychopath, yeah, or a sadist, I can have cognitive empathy. I can know what you feel, but I might want to hurt you. It's not compassion, right? Compassion is always connected with feeling, knowing another person's feeling, but then also really having this wish of being helpful, of alleviating that suffering. So that's why kindness is so important. Yeah. So kindness, just like this, hey, may you be happy, may you not suffer, right? So there's a saying when the sunshine of kindness falls onto the tears of suffering, arises the rainbow of compassion. Yeah, I can see a few people smile. So compassion is actually a positive state, no? It's a resource. Yeah. And we can have compassion even for our own suffering. Yeah. The dog probably can't have self-compassion, right? But as human beings, we have this complex mind where we can have a self-object almost, right? We can give and receive compassion not only to others, but also to ourselves. Isn't that great? Yeah. So, we talked about the hostility piece, right? So hostility is like definitely the opposite of compassion. But pity, in German, we have this Mitleid, oder? Yeah. If we have pity with someone, might look like compassion, but actually it's not. Yeah. Because often there's a kind of a separation. Yeah. There's people that we pity, we feel probably superior. Mm. Yeah. And it's not so easy to feel other people's feelings, right? Not always. Because it can be distressing. No? If we see somebody suffer, we feel their suffering as ours, we suffer. So part of this human life is dealing with the fact that we are open and that we take in other people's emotions and we feel them as ours, and we have to find a way to navigate that, right? Each one of us. Are there any people here who work with people, teachers, therapists, pedagogues? Yeah. Any people who have kids? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody caring for someone who's not feeling well? Yeah. So in those times, right, we know what it feels like to care for someone who is suffering. It can be a real challenge. Yeah. It can be a real challenge, especially if we don't have the resources to deal with the suffering that we perceive inwardly, because then what happens often is that we push the people away that we're supposed to help. Yeah. Or we kind of just burn out and just, are stressed out. So that's the thing around empathy fatigue. Yeah. So are we all a little bit empathy fatigued? I mean, so much going on in this world. Just go out, you go to Billa, you go to Uzex. Gosh, you see all these people, right? It's a real issue, no? So that's why this kind of really understanding and being able to cultivate this positive state of compassion, which gives us strength, can be helpful. Yeah, and also I kind of addressed this shortly, that for some of us it's not so easy to feel compassion. Yeah, I would say especially men, but depending on really your upbringing. Yeah, if your attachment was mixed with experiences of disconnection, which is probably true from most of us, when we reconnect, we might re-experience some of that pain of disconnection. Yeah. So in the compassion training, we call this backdraft. Anybody familiar with backdraft? There's a movie by that name, I think. It's a fireman movie, no? So backdraft is if you're a fireman and there's a room and there's a door and there's a small fire in the room. If you open the door and the fresh air comes in, boom, it explodes. Yeah. So in the same way, if our hearts are hot with old pain and we open with compassion the door to our hearts, it can explode. Yeah. So, and that experience can be really disorienting when we're actually being kind to ourselves, but we kind of feel unwell when we do so. So know that that's normal, and that's part of the learning of self-compassion training is dealing with these experiences should we have them. Yeah, I wanted to put this on here because you might be experiencing some backdraft right now or later in the evening or in the future when you engage more in compassion training. Yeah. Oh, and finally, you see it's a pretty complex topic, no? What about toxic empathy? I definitely relate to that. I think because of my upbringing, I have no boundaries. So I'm really working on that. I really tend to suck up other people's emotions, right? Sometimes I feel like I have little sense of self and I overgive. I overgive in ways that leads me to abandon myself. Anybody else here who identifies like a little bit codependent traits? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for the support. Yeah. So sometimes what we can perceive as kindness or compassion can be just really a lack of boundaries, right? And it's kind of good to know. Okay. Well, I'm curious if we're gonna get through this presentation tonight. So okay, this was an easy slide, right? So we'll go to a more challenging one, but I think a really valuable one to try to understand. We'll just check my notes here. Okay, so this is a little bit complex, but it's really helpful to understand kind of the context in which I wanted to talk about compassion in. Yeah. And it's a context that is based on our evolution and how our evolution has wired us through our nervous system and our brains to basically meet our needs, right? And this is also helpful to understand because it explains a few of the biological mechanisms that underlie the effects of psychedelics on compassion, yeah, and how they may be used to facilitate compassionate processes. So I'll go through this slide and I'll check back in with you if that was clear, if you have any extra questions, okay? So let's make it really simple. We have 3 needs, right? We have the need for safety, we have the need for contentment, and we have the need for connection, right? So on the very primal level, and we share this with all other animals, let's say, on a very primal level, we need to be physically unharmed, right? We need to have enough food in the belly, enough drink, and we need to have some kind of connection. So evolution developed our hardware in ways that we would be engaged to meet those needs, right? So it gave us the threat protection system. So here in the red, to keep us to respond to threats, yeah, with defense mechanisms, fight, freeze, right? For example, it gave us the drive and the resource seeking system, yeah, to achieve things and to acquire resources or rewards. And for us, not for the dog so much, but for us, it gave us also the soothing system or the affiliation system. So this is about belonging. Yeah. So this enables us to soothe, to calm. And actually, this is also linked to the ways that our brain is developed. Yeah. So the threat system links to the reptilian brain, very primal. The drive system links to the the limbic system, which is the source of our emotions, right? So probably, certain animals have sort of certain sense of basic emotions. And then we humans, we also have the neocortex, which is the place of the soothing system, which has speech and logic and higher understanding. And so compassion is really based here in the soothing system, yeah? So from an evolutionary perspective, most of our most recent evolution as human beings with the neocortex took place in small tribes, social groups, yeah? And this neocortex and the compassion that is part of that evolved for us to help us regulate our negative emotions, right? Our challenging emotions, yeah? By, let's see here, by really attuning to the feelings of self and others, right? So if I'm stressed over here, maybe I can get some connection to over there. Or if there's some stress over there, maybe I can offer some care and affection, on a very basic way. Also, of course, to express feelings of affiliation, of belonging, of warmth, and of safeness. Yeah. You can imagine 15 of us in some kind of desert, right? And we're kind of really dependent on each other for our survival. Of course, we'll have to have these capacities to connect and to offer warmth to each other and safeness, and to feel as a group a sense of belonging. And so, of course, this whole soothing system is also linked to our attachment system. Yeah, because as humans, we're born very prematurely, very early. So much of our development takes place in our environment. So we really, we share this with animals as well, but we really needed to attach to our caregivers because we wouldn't be able to survive on our own. And so, of course, we also have mind states that give us the possibility to seek care. So care seeking, but also caregiving. Yeah. So, for example, a crying child and a comforting mother, right? Care seeking and caregiving. And then all of this, we know, can also be activated with respect to ourselves. Yeah. So I think on a positive note here is that we're really wired for compassion as human beings. Yeah. Our society doesn't reflect that certainly at this point, but we can begin to create safe communities and to offer some of that care and compassion even to ourselves. And so on this slide, these three circles, the three systems, they have about pretty much the same size. But the development of the soothing system really depends on the quality of the care that we received as children. Yeah. So that lays, our early connections really lay the foundation of our capacity to be caring and kind to ourselves. Yeah. As an adult. So some of us, and I'll include myself in that group, we have very small green circles. Yeah. We have very little capacity to soothe and to, feel belonging and that kind of social safety. So then the only way that we have open is to ping pong between the threat and the drive system. Yeah. And I think from my own personal experience, I can say it's pretty exhausting. Yeah. So you're either fighting, freezing, or you're seeking. Yeah. Yet, even if we imagine, like we just did, to be cared about, we are actually engaging the soothing system. Yeah. So that can help us really feel calm and safe. Yeah. So imagining being cared about or being cared about, for our brain, it doesn't really make a difference because it can't really distinguish between internal and external. Yeah. And so I really want to emphasize here the importance of the potential of this soothing system to create a sense of safety, yeah, through feeling cared for, and also offering care to us and to others. And when we can engage the soothing system more, then it leads to the fact that we can disengage more from the threat system, right? That gives us all these emotions like anger and anxiety and disgust and shame to keep us safe. Yeah. So yeah, we have very primitive ways of staying safe through fight, flight, freeze, but we also have more evolved ways of feeling safe through this soothing system. Yeah. Through feelings of belonging and care. Right? So if the small child on the playground, it falls down, it hurts the arm, the child can't soothe itself, but the mother comes, or the father or whoever takes the child in the arm, and then the child will relax, no? Yeah. So this is how we can learn to find more sort of calm and safety by engaging the soothing system with feelings like compassion and care. And so here I want to also distinguish a little bit, and then I'll pause here to see how that lands with you, between safety and safeness. Yeah. So if we engage from the threat system, we are trying to prevent harm, right? Which is fine, right? But there's another way to safeness, or another way of experiencing safeness or thinking about safety, and it is by considering not only the prevention of harm, but actually the absence of threat, as well as the presence of supportive and helpful others. Yeah. So on my way here in the metro, there were no people with guns. No. So there was an absence of threat. But were there really people, like maybe here, who were looking at me, who were smiling at me, who I feel like I could turn to? Probably not. Yeah. And so again, when we feel safe, when we have signals, social signals that indicate people are receptive, they are kind towards me, they're open, we can start to feel safer. Yeah. And then we don't have to fall back so much on this really primitive system of the threat system. So again, these are different ways that we can find safety based on the way our nervous system and our hardware and our brains are wired. Yeah. So if some of you have heard of polyvagal theory, which is really connected with the vagus nerve, that's, really the science of safety, of safeness in terms of the soothing system. Yeah. So I wanted to give you this rather complex slide, really to contextualize compassion as really part of our evolutionary potential and development, and also as a way that we can engage in a more recent evolutionary step to find more safety, so that we don't have to spend so much time in the threat system. Yeah. Threat system is good for, like, right, if a car comes and hits you, like, you jump and, but like on a more like everyday kind of continuous kind of way to find safety, probably the soothing system is good to at least have on the map. Okay, So how did that land with you? Is that kind of sort of clear? Do you have any questions? Yeah.
A question here. These icons for the brain areas and the chemical substances, the focus blocker. Is there any relation between the do those substances work on certain brain areas? And is there anything in this slide which like the connection or?
Yeah, I have a separate slide for that later when I'll talk more about the specific substances. So, because of course, psychedelic substances, they have different, chemical properties and stuff. I think usually I have a note there about, yeah. Maybe we'll see if that question is answered in the later slide. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have this.
Hmm?
I mean, I just put it on the website thing, but we're
Okay.
talking right now.
Hmm?
Wondering how much or how far you can kind of train your own soothing system.
Yeah.
Maybe like meditation is not what it. I mean, just engage in it more and
Yeah. So that's actually the rest of my talk. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the short question is yes. And both compassion training and psychedelics can be really helpful in that. So in a later slide, I'll also address insecure attachment, right? So if we don't have secure attachment, it's a little bit more challenging to regulate emotions and everything because we didn't experience so much safety when we were younger. And there's some research that indicates that there's something like earned secure attachment, where as an adult, you kind of have more experiences with yourself or with meaningful others that provide you with that sort of safety. And both self-compassion and I would say different forms of psychedelics to be really helpful with that. Yeah. Answer your question?
And
okay.
Let's see.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, so maybe let's go to the next slide and look at a little bit more at compassion, not in terms of the context, but the contents. Yeah. So this is a model of compassion with attributes and with skills. Yeah. So we can talk a little bit about what is compassion actually. So if you look at do I have my, no. If you look at the center of the circle, you can see the attributes of compassion, and we'll just go through those. So first of all, we need to have a certain type of sensitivity. Yeah. So we need to be able to recognize suffering and also understand that suffering is just universal. Yeah. That's the sensitivity of compassion. Like I said, with kindness, we need to have sympathy for compassion. We need to have distress tolerance. We need to be able to tolerate our own distress or the distress of others. Of course, again, we need to have empathy or concern for those who are suffering, whether that's us or others. And then a care for the well-being of the person who is suffering. Yeah, so that we have the motivation to act to reduce the suffering. And we engage in compassion through certain skills. So, for example, imagery, right? What we've just done, like, so for example, if we have a friend who's suffering, right? The imagery may be like us thinking about how we can help them, right? Having images of what this person may need, and etc. Also, in terms of reasoning, so the way that we think, yeah. So we may think something like, "Oh, of course, in this situation, this person is suffering. Totally understandable." That might be our thoughts. Yeah. Then the behavior. So if we have a friend who's suffering, we might have acts of service and support. There may be certain body sensations and also feelings. So probably feelings of warmth and kindness towards our friend. And then also the way that we can direct our attention. So probably our attention would go to, what would this person need right now? So note that when we're self-critical, the imagery and the reasoning and the behavior, the feeling and the attention will be very different, no? Almost like the opposite. Yeah. So maybe when we're suffering and we're self-critical, we would, think maybe we're a loser, or, we would have self-critical thoughts of ourselves. Maybe we'd engage in behavior that's not really constructive. Yeah, maybe we have feelings of anxiety or shame. Maybe our attention is more on what we've done wrong. Yeah. So this is like a little bit more of a little bit more complex definition, we could say, of what the compassionate mind entails. And so maybe before we take a short break, we can finish this part with another short guided practice around feeling caring. In the first practice, we explored what it's like to feel cared about, and now we'll tap into our soothing system, right, and explore what it feels like to feel caring. Yeah, and so again, if you want to make yourself comfortable, again, probably different thoughts about processing the information that you've just heard. So maybe just dropping into your body for a moment. And taking a few nice and easy breaths. Yeah, and if you like, you can just stay here feeling into the body, breathing, or if you'd like to explore what it's like to feel caring, then you can bring to mind a good friend of yours, someone that's close to you, maybe not a family member. Sometimes those are too close. So a friend of you who, maybe is going through a difficult time in his life, or maybe this friend failed or had some kind of stressful event. So this could be a concrete situation from the past, or you could more like visualize it. And so a close friend who was suffering in some way. And then taking a few moments to really explore, how do you respond to your friend in that situation? Maybe there's something that you say, or the tone of your voice. Maybe how is your posture in respect to your friend? Also checking in with any feelings of kindness or compassion that you may be experiencing for him or for her. Maybe there's also a soft voice in the back of your mind, like, oh, may you not suffer, or maybe something more specific, depending on the person, like, may you not worry so much, or may you find work. And again, if you like, you can strengthen your sense of compassion by putting a hand on your heart or on your cheek. So knowing what it's like to feel compassion. And if you like, opening to this experience in your body, letting it land what it feels like to feel caring. And so taking another few moments to let this experience settle, maybe noticing any positive, any beneficial aspects of this experience. And then knowing that you can always come back to what it feels like to feel caring, letting this exercise go gently. Maybe letting the next few exhalations be long, easy. If you like, once again, feeling the sense of contact with the floor or the chair or cushion. And then when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Maybe you'd like to stretch. Yeah. So another flow of compassion, another way to activate this soothing system by feeling compassion for another person. And the good news is that you can be that other person. Mm. So the same way that we can extend compassion to others, we can also extend compassion to ourselves. For many of us, it's more challenging to feel compassion for ourselves and others, but the research says that's doable with some practice. And research also says that psychedelics may be helpful with this. Okay, so my compassion goes to you for so much attention and taking up all this information and engaging in these exercises. So I care. So I want to give you a short break. Give me a short break. So I'll suggest that we'll take 10 minutes until 10 after 9, and then I'll ring the bell when we come back. Yeah, so you can get up and move or go to the bathroom. Taking good care of yourself, okay? Ach, aber meine Präsi ist viel zu lang.
Ja?
Ja, leider. Ich muss ja schauen, was ich kürze, aber. Wie war's bisschen? Wie war's bisschen? Wäre zu viel?
Ja?
Super.
Schon zu neu jetzt, ja. Zeitverhitzer,
Ja, eben.
Können wir schauen, dass wir so zwischen halb und dreiviertel fertig werden?
Ja.
Okay, super.
Eher 3/4, weil ich habe auf halb geplant. So, welcome back after the break. Guess a few people will still be joining us. Hi, Frederik. Ist das Mikro an, oder? Mhm.
Why is disconnecting?
Oh.
Oh,
Mic check 1, 2. Yes, 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 yes.
interesting.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yes, 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 yes.
Ist sowas stimmt.
Aha.
alles über Bluetooth auch.
Yes,
Ja,
yes,
okay.
yes, yes.
So, wohin müssen wir steigen? Gut, oder?
Yes, 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 yes.
Bluetooth mode.
Also, ist nicht Bluetooth.
Nee, geht
Wa,
Kabel.
wa, aber jetzt.
Bluetooth mode.
Haben wir noch? Danke.
Wa.
Bluetooth mode.
Wa. Da. Mic check 1, 2. Ja, genau. So. Okay. Nice. So maybe, yeah, we can start with another microdose of compassion. And so I want to share with you a really simple practice, which we've already introduced, which is this kind of soothing touch. Yeah, so really, really primal way of activating the soothing system and giving yourself some care and support. And so, like any other practice, you can sit this out. Yeah, but and I'll guide you through just a few ways that we can begin, or you can begin to explore for yourself. What kind of touch do you actually find soothing? Yeah, so you can begin, if you like, by just folding your hands like this. Or maybe holding one hand and the other. So maybe you're noticing the warmth of your hand or your hands. And so just taking a moment to notice what that feels like. Nothing needs to happen, just being curious. Maybe you also want to explore, like putting one hand or both hands on your heart, relaxing the shoulders. Or maybe a hand on your belly and one hand on the heart. So notice how you can both be the giver of this touch, but also the person who receives it. And just playing with that, if you like. Yeah, you can maybe offer yourself a soft hug by taking the right hand to your left shoulder and left hand to the right shoulder. Maybe soft hug, or maybe you want to have a little bit of a firmer hug. Yeah, maybe taking another few moments. Maybe you'd like to stroke your arm, or really exploring for yourself. Some people may like to hold their head. Maybe finding for yourself some kind of touch that is comforting and soothing. Okay, and then you can continue to play with soothing touch, even as we continue to re-engage with our presentation and with each other. So before covering a little bit of the area of psychedelics and compassion, by the way, I'm running out of time, but our plan is to finish in the next half hour and also to leave some room for questions. So let's see how that goes. But I need to address almost like the opposite of self-compassion, which is self-criticism, no? So if you look at sort of mental health outcomes, self-criticism is always indicator of poor mental health, yeah, of more distress, and self-compassion is always usually related to much better mental health outcomes. Yeah. So that's why it's such an important topic to address, and we can maybe begin exploring it by really thinking how do many of us respond when we suffer? Yeah. Usually, automatically. So what can happen is that we, first of all, we ruminate. We over-identify with whatever's happened. Maybe we wrote an email about somebody saying something bad and we sent it to the person that, or maybe we made a mistake, or we were having a talk and we went over time, like any kind of difficult situation. What can really happen is that we tend to really narrow our focus and we become super over-identified with this challenge, with this difficulty. Yeah. Maybe we start to have, ruminative thoughts, trying to problem solve in our mind. Probably quite familiar for many of us. Usually what will also happen is that we'll tend to isolate. Yeah. So not seek so much connection. Maybe we feel like everybody else on Instagram has perfect lives and it's just, we who have problems, who have made mistakes, who suffer. Maybe we feel shame. And then internally we criticize, we judge ourselves, no? Sometimes very harshly. There's a saying that says if we talk to others the way we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends. Yeah. Yeah. And so self-compassion really is the opposite. So instead of being over-identified and ruminating, we are mindful in the face of suffering, which means that we tend to maybe notice our thoughts as stories that we're telling ourselves, but not as facts. Maybe we have an ability to turn towards our suffering and to be open to the experience in a more grounded way, knowing that difficult emotions come and go. And with self-compassion, we also are invited to see our own suffering in the universality of suffering in the life of a human being. Everybody suffers. Yeah? So why should I isolate? Everybody suffers. Everybody gets old, right? Gets sick. Things happen that we don't want to happen. Things that we want to happen don't happen. It's just the way it is. So actually, in this experience of suffering, we can find connection. I'm not alone with this. It's not just me. It's so normal. It's just a human being. This is what it's like. This is what it's like to suffer in this way. Oh, now I know. Yeah, so actually we feel a sense of connection in our suffering, through our suffering, instead of isolating us. Klingt logisch, oder? Yeah. And I think when we're in groups and we start to explore this and when we look around, we can really start to feel it as well. And then it becomes, even when we're alone, it becomes a resource. And of course, instead of criticizing ourselves, right, we would never criticize a friend who's just failed or lost someone, no? Be very kind. Extend an embrace, say kind things, right? Offer time and understanding. Then we can do that with ourselves as well, yeah, which is self-kindness. So simply said, self-compassion is just like treating yourself the way that you would treat a good friend. Might not be easy at first, but research shows that it's a practice, and when we practice, then we can grow. Yeah. So one of the questions was whether the soothing system was kind of a muscle that you can train. Yes, it is. Yeah, just like mindfulness. So there's kind of, if we think about sort of how we deal with suffering, yeah, some of the suffering we meet internally, yeah, within ourselves, and then we need tender self-compassion, right? We need to comfort ourselves, to reassure us. Yeah, of course, this is normal. To validate, yeah, you're going through a really hard time. Yeah, and to really be like, oh gosh, you know? But sometimes we need to show up in the world and act to prevent suffering, right? So, for example, if we have an abusive boss or a family member, we say, no. This is fierce self-compassion. Yeah? Kraftvolles Selbstmitgefühl. So we protect ourselves, or we provide for ourselves. We take what we need, yeah, to grow and to develop, or we give and we provide others. And we motivate. Good job. Yeah. So these are the two different ways that we can practice self-compassion. If we engage in self-criticism, what we're actually doing is we're engaging the threat system with respect to ourselves. We're attacking ourselves. There's this exercise where you explore the self-critical voice, and you also explore the part of you that's being criticized. And we know it's not nice to be criticized, no? If somebody else criticizes us, we're like, hey, back off. Yeah. But when we criticize ourselves, yeah, as a habit, it can be really draining. and also understandable. Yeah, maybe we've had people in our past that criticized us and we internalized that as a way of feeling safe. When we isolate, it's like we engage in the flight response. Yeah. Or when we ruminate, we freeze. Yeah. So just to say that self-criticism, it has some real biological, nervous system related effects. Yeah. Which again, by engaging in the soothing system, by practicing self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness, we can reverse. Yeah. And one way that you can do that is through a soothing touch. Yeah. Very basic way. So, I need to get to the psychedelic part because it's really interesting. There are different ways. There's different ways that we can train in compassion. And so here's just a brief list. So actually some of the practices that I offered and some of the material that I presented come from compassion-focused therapy and the Mindful Self-Compassion program. Actually, most of these trainings are group formats, yeah, where you have some psychoeducation, you have some group sharing, you have some homework exercise that you take home. Usually they run over a number of weeks, and compassion-focused therapy is a little bit different because it's for individual setting. It can be more tailored to the individual. Yeah. By the way, I'm running a self-compassion course in May and June, to which I'd like to invite you. It's on Fridays in Vienna. Yeah. So let's come to this slide here. Before we engage in that, are there any? I want to leave some time for questions in the end, but are there any urgent questions right now, or? Yeah.
You just mentioned that there's an exercise on this topic of part in yourself that is attacking some of the part that is being attacked. Could you elaborate on the type of exercise or find it or?
Yeah. Maybe we talk afterwards and then maybe I can send you a link or something. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about that exercise is also there's another exercise which then asks, okay, who's aware of both the part that's criticizing, who or what is aware of the part that is criticizing and the part that is criticized? Yeah. So it takes us into another kind of dimension, but we'll leave that for another time. I just wanted to open that door for you. So let's come to psychedelics now. And so I've always been speaking about psychedelics. Of course, there's different substances, as we know. In this presentation here, I focus mainly on psilocybin. I have a slide on MDMA, of course, and also on ayahuasca. Yeah. But of course, there's different ways to talk about psychedelics and psychedelic substances. I'm just not going to go into that here right now. But I want to highlight the effects that psychedelics have that can facilitate compassionate processes. And I think some of them we've already heard. Yeah. So first, there's this reduction in self-referential thoughts, right? So we know through the way that psychedelics act in the brain, it sort of engages or disengages certain brain regions that are about I, me, and mine. Yeah. And when we're less concerned about I, me, and mine, there's more connection also towards others. And there's less rumination in the face of distress. Yeah. So Then, of course, this phenomenon of ego dissolution. Yeah, so again, experiences of unity and connectedness that through the sense of connectedness can have a really strong impact on the way that we're able to see ourselves from a greater context or see others in a greater context. Yeah. So I would imagine if you experienced yourself as some kind of absolute reality that includes both you and others, then that could leave an imprint for you, having a different relationship both to yourself and to others, let's say. We talked about that. So different ways that they can increase emotional empathy. Yeah. So maybe if you go to festivals or if you take psychedelics with friends, like you'll know this effect. Maybe if you do psychedelics for yourself, maybe you also know how it sort of opens you up for your own emotions, right? Then also there's this shift with the psychedelic states to more positive emotions, right? I mean, my God, we have this negativity bias, right? Again, in the brain through evolution. It was really important to really think about all the bad stuff, but there's so much good stuff out there. There's so much good stuff out there, even as we sit here and talk. And so it can be helpful to, kind of shift more our attention on those things that are actually working well for us. Yeah, the good things, the many good things in our life. Again, right? I mean, when we feel better, we're more open to also processing our own pain or, or processing the pain of others, right? When we're depressed, we're not really so open to our suffering or the suffering of others. Then there are these prosocial effects. Yeah, so I was just talking about that with Phil, actually, whether that's true or not for psychedelics, but it's on the slide that at least subjectively, people usually feel more, they engage more in behavior that also benefits others. Yeah, not so self-centered. And then there's this thing of psychological flexibility, right? So often, self judgment is just this habit. We didn't know better. People didn't sort of, maybe in our family system, we didn't have any other kind of experience than being judged and being criticized. And so the psychedelic state can really open the mind to new ways of thinking, which can allow to take new information in about ourselves and to process differently. Yeah. And then also this sense of connectedness. Yeah. The connectedness to yourself, to others, and to the world. So I like to talk about psychedelics as pharmacological pathways to compassion because they have their way of acting, through our neurobiology that facilitate these processes. And if we have compassion training where we know how that we can engage in these processes, it really opens up sort of a more compassionate way to work with psychedelic states, or also learning compassion training to, kind of work differently with psychedelics. So I want to show you some of these slides here. If you look at the one on the bottom, so this was a study from 2017. And there's a so-called self-compassion scale, right? So it has like 17 items and you score, and then it gives you your kind of, you can kind of scale how self-compassionate a person is. And this study looked at, I think it was in an ayahuasca retreat. It gave them a questionnaire before the ceremony, 24 hours after, and then a follow-up at 2 months. And I think what you see here is that, so people start out with the blue graph here on the bottom, and then 24 hours after the ayahuasca ceremony, they have a massive increase in self-compassion. Like this is like, you feel this. Yeah. And probably some of you have felt this. Now, this is kind of the afterglow experience. Interesting enough, after 2 months, people are back at baseline. Yeah. So if you've been here, why would you want to go back down there? I mean, kind of stupid question, but this is where the whole compassion training comes in terms of integration of experiences. Yeah. So maybe, this increase here in self-compassion is maybe the equivalent of a 5 or 10-day retreat that you would do. There's also other studies which are more like, this one is for alcohol use disorder and psilocybin, where they looked at the reports of the participants and they did a phenomenological analysis. So it's more a qualitative study. I just want to show you this table here, which talks about the themes. Yeah. So there's 3 basic themes that people report in psilocybin experience, people with a background of alcohol addiction. So the first one is self-awareness. Then the second is intrapersonal. So this is about how do you deal with yourself. And the third theme is interpersonal. It's your relationship with others. So in terms of self-avoidance, self-awareness, before the psilocybin experience, people report being, on autopilot, really avoiding, emotions. And in terms of their relationship with themselves, they report of shame and self-criticism. And in terms of, connection with others, they report of, actually that the alcohol was sort of a surrogate for connection. Yeah. Surrogate. And Ersatz, yeah. So then in the psilocybin experience, in terms of the self-awareness, all of a sudden these people have experiences of having a more of a spacious awareness, yeah, being able to feel and accept emotions. And in terms of their relationship with themselves, they have what's termed here as self-compassion template. In the ayahuasca study you just saw, there was a real increase in self-compassion. So maybe for the first time in a long time, all of a sudden, these people are feeling what it feels like to be kind to themselves. Yeah. And then that can be like a template that they can continue to work with. And then in terms of relationship with others, again, we have here this theme again of interconnectedness. Yeah. Feeling more connected with others. And then after psilocybin, in terms of the self-awareness, people report really were being able to kind of integrate these experiences of the spacious awareness in terms of being mindful, also in the face of stress, right? So maybe when they get triggered, maybe when they have the impulse to drink, maybe there's more space around that, different way to relate to that experience. In terms of the relationship with themselves, they report coping with self-compassion. Yeah, so finding a different way to deal with their suffering. And in terms of the connection with other people, they report of connection, compassion, and belonging. Yeah, so pretty powerful stuff, I think. And really, I think it shows how central themes around connection and compassion and self-compassion are in these psychedelic states. So I wanted to read you these participant reports, but we're just going to skip that and see how we end. So this was another study that looked at changes in self-rumination and self-compassion because like there's all this psychedelic therapy happening and people are getting better, but people are researching like what's actually acting, what's happening with the people that they feel better. And this one looked at changes in self-rumination and self-compassion and found that this is a really central mediator, yeah? So people experiencing more self-worth, self-love, acceptance, forgiveness, and compassion kind of replicates the other study. so this is a different substance. This is MDMA, so it has a different profile. And I think this one is pretty interesting. So what they did here was to give recreational ecstasy users, include them in the study and give them a compassionate imagery practice to do during the drug effect. Yeah, so they want to see, okay, does the compassionate imagery and the empathy sort of boost each other? Yeah. And this is what they found. So you see here in figure 2, on the left side, it says, what does it say? Can't even read it. So figure 2A, the decrease here you see, so there's 3 time points, yeah? Time point 0 is at the point when they consume ecstasy. Time point 1 in the middle is when they do the compassionate imagery practice, and time point 3 is after that compassionate imagery. So you see the decrease here is a measure in self-criticism, and the dotted line is the control. So these are people who have not consumed, and the straight line, the full line, is the people under the effect of ecstasy. So you can see the drop, the decrease in self-criticism at the time point of the compassion. Can you actually see this? Yeah, okay. At the time point 1, even for the people who have not consumed, but for the people who have consumed, there is a bigger drop because we can assume because of the ecstasy. And yet there is another drop when they engage in this compassionate imagery. The figure 3 on the other side is the increase here in self-compassion, again with the self-compassion scale. And the interesting thing here is that people with high attachment avoidance on the right side, they seem to benefit even more. So people with insecure attachments, who usually come from a background of having not so much safety growing up, they seem to benefit even more from these interventions, both the pharmacological pathway, in this case MDMA, as well as the compassion training. Yeah. And again, I mean, that's pretty steep curve, right? So they must be feeling really good, at least at that time. Yeah. So I think I kind of have to come to a close. There's so many interesting studies. I could talk for this for days, but this was a study actually by Bessel van der Kolk, who's the author of the Body Keeps the Score. He looked at effects of MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. And he also found basically the same thing, that people with low self-compassion, they improve even better when they receive MDMA and psychotherapy, compared to the people who just received psychotherapy. Because, as many of us know, talk therapy just isn't really enough. And so then there's already these ideas about really including, so this is a paper on psychedelic-assisted compassion-focused therapy for depression. So they have a whole plan of sessions. It's 10 sessions. There's compassion-focused therapy in the preparation sessions. Then you have the dosing sessions. So here you can see how it really, the psychedelic-assisted and the compassion-based really comes together. Yeah. So I wanted to really share this guided practice with you around feeling like a good person. So maybe I'll just give you the pith instructions. So if you can look at this person and you think, or like a friend, like, hey, this is a good person, you can use that experience to consider for yourself and maybe even tell yourself that actually, me too, I'm also a good person. Basically, right? So you can play with that. But now, thanks for your attention. I have some upcoming workshops. Like I said, the Self-Compassion 8-week course, I'd love to see you in that. I'll give you a 25% discount. We also have a workshop series with the Psychedelic Society that we're going to run on Thursdays in June. And I have a For the advanced practitioners, I have a self-compassion for shame course in May and June, which is focused really on shame. And now I'm really curious to maybe have some of your questions and look at the collection of questions that we engaged in. So thanks for your care and for your connection, and thanks for your patience. And if you have time, it'd be lovely to stay and chat a little bit. If you need to go, of course, totally understandable. And I hope to see you next time. Yeah. Take care. Also, if you'd like to look at the slides, I can't share them publicly because probably some of the images are copyrighted. But if you send me an email, I'd love to share them with you. Yeah, so you can have a look at the slides that we skipped as well. Okay. Let's look at some questions then. Is there any research and clinical experimentation in Austria? Do you mean with psychedelics or with compassion or with both? Maybe the person left already. I'm not really into clinical research, so I can't say. I hear there's some ketamine studies in AKH. I don't think Austria is really such a great place when it comes to psychedelic research. So, yeah. Huh? Okay, in July there's gonna be a psilocybin study in AKH for depression, or okay, nice. Is there any questions from the audience that you want to take? Yes. Ja, passiert Deutsche.
Wie Studien alles. Kennst du Studien auch? Das sind die gute Ergebnisse.
Ja.
Ich denke da immer, ja, wo viel Licht ist, muss auch hatten. Wo starke Wirkung ist, dann muss auch eine Nebenwirkung sein. Ja, das weiß man wenn nach.
Ja.
Klingt alles immer so.
Ja.
Wunderschön.
Yeah. Should we translate it to English or? Okay, so the question is, all these studies, they have so good results, and where there's light, there's also shadow. So thanks a lot. I do have a tendency to present the light because I'm so excited about this research. But actually, there is saying that the people that are clinically cured, right? So you have people who are depressed, they go into a psilocybin study, and clinically, they might be cured from depression, but they might still feel like not a good person, right? Yeah. So to distinguish those two things, and you also hear of people like these studies are, pretty tight, usually like 10 sessions, this, that. And you also hear of people who engage in some really deep process work in these studies. And then the study's over and they're being left in kind of a bad place because they couldn't complete their process. So if you engage in psychedelic exploration or therapy, you might feel worse. That is a risk. Whether that feeling worse is part of your healing journey is kind of a different question. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
I just read a book and was about the 60s. And he kind of made the argument that in the 60s, it wasn't just light and the dark and the sun of dark, but actually the opposite, that in parts of San Francisco, there were like just hedonism all over the place, rave that was kind of rationalized through the lens of, we all want, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And this, for me, it really highlights the importance for having a container and also the setting of self-compassion, for example.
Yeah.
Set an intention to engage in these things, because if you don't have a container, it can just chaos and mayhem.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it adds can I make a comment on that then? Yeah. Because it was something I was going to say about psychedelics. I recently learned that there's a certain hype around psychedelics, and it's kind of displayed as this one kind of event, right? So you go and you take psilocybin, and then you're cured from your depression, and it's kind of like the zeitgeist, that the way that we tend to talk about these substances, and it really doesn't reflect sort of more the kind of process approach, right? Which focuses not so much on events, but on processes and processes over a lifetime. And yes, if we talk about mindfulness and self-compassion as a practice, it really is a process. Yeah. Also, I recently learned or heard, and I found it really helpful to hear, and I want to share it with you, like, there is no agreed upon way of how psychedelics work or how they can be used. There's never been. There's a big medicalization. Like you said, in the 60s, it was used for this and for that. Of course, in the medical and in the clinical context, that's the way things work. You have a protocol and you have standards of use. And I mean, that can also be beneficial, right? But I'm not promoting, any kind of particular kind of engagement with psychedelics as right or wrong. And I actually, if you look at the history, there's been many different ways people have used psychedelics, even like beyond the kind of more spiritual, shamanic, or therapeutic or recreational use. Yeah, there's many options that are open here. And so that's why it's so great to have, places like this where we can, in a container, engage, right? And discuss. Yeah.
I think I'd also like to add something.
Yeah.
Because what kind of like comes out in the studies is that, you take psilocybin, and then, as you said, you're cured, or, your symptoms or whatever get better. But it's just, so, you take something and then everything goes away. That's just not how things work. And it's really, it can give a glimpse of what's possible. Or you think you said you're given a template of what might be out there, a different perspective on things. But then if you go back to your old life and do everything the same, this perspective vanishes. I think this one study showed that after 2 months of your experience, you're back to the same level. It's like, if you do the same things every day, and then you have a psychedelic experience, and then you do the same things every day, there will not be any change. So it really requires work on compassion or mindfulness or whatever. There are different practices to integrate the change into your life. So I think it's a big promise to say psychedelics are the cure for everything. I think they're a great push into a new direction, but it still requires effort. Not just like taking a substance and then everything is chill.
Yeah. Yeah. Many of us have been there, no? And we've been here, and then we go back here. It's not so easy. Yeah. But then we inquire, what's happening? I mean, probably there's good reasons why we are resistant to change, because maybe there's a lot of pain, right? And we're just, or, I don't know. But you have to find out for yourself. But yeah. Or maybe we lack resources of really implementing, right? Behavioral change. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't stick. Maybe our nervous systems are too regulated, and so we can't integrate. So many different things. Maybe there's a part of us who doesn't want to change. Right? Do we have to change? Did I say that?
Do we have to do anything?
Yeah.
Question. Do you know of similar studies, or have you experimented in your own work with achieving similar effects without substances, but other ways of achieving altered state of consciousness?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I came to holotropic breathwork through my first ayahuasca session. And I mean, there's, you can work with the breath, there's so many ways. Our culture doesn't really promote exploration of altered states of consciousness, unfortunately. I wish we lived in more of that culture. I think there's much interesting epistemic knowledge to be gained in altered states, and also I think it has real therapeutic potential. I think the problem is a little bit, or the interesting question could be, when you begin to experience altered states of consciousness, how do you relate to the ordinary state? What is actually the ordinary or the non-ordinary state? And so I think then you need to begin to ask the question, not what changes in my experience or how can I change the state, but what's aware of the experience? What's aware? Who is this, or what is this state arising to? And there's kind of something going on when you ask these questions, where you can find, it's kind of like a paradox, right? That's why they call it non-dual awareness. So you kind of, how to say, you integrate the absolute and the conventional. It becomes non-separable. So maybe that could be interesting. Yeah. Because the problem is, you go to an altered state, it's so nice there, you don't have any problems, you feel connected, and then you come back, right? So then it can create a little bit of a kind of a disconnection again. So how do you find, again, I would name it as the awareness, which is in the ordinary and the non-ordinary. That could be interesting. Yeah. I'll have a workshop on that in one of those Thursdays. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's time, no?
I have
one more question, yeah.
Yes, but it goes back to the beginning, the compassion and stuff. So how would you manifest compassion if you're in a situation where your friend, let's say, drinks too much or is a narcissist or something and just perceives himself as a victim?
Yeah.
And you give him compassion, or her, whatever, compassion, and it would then make kind of a validation rather than understanding that they have to change. When discipline is the compassion, how would you communicate that? Or
Yeah, I mean, that's tricky, when we see our friends suffer and we have compassion for them, but they don't change. Then we might feel so much compassion for them that we start to lose our own boundaries. That's happened to me, at least. And then we become kind of over involved, and then we kind of burn out, no? But we want to, keep the connection to this friend at the same time. So there's this thing about compassion with equanimity, because I mean, thank you, because it's hard when we're really close to someone, like a family member, our child, and is suffering. We want to help, but they won't let us help. Then we need to have equanimity, basically, right? Equanimity is like, there's a saying, every being is on its own journey. I'm not the cause of this person's suffering. I wish I could make it go away. I want to try and help as much as I can. And this is these situations are tough. Yeah. I'm also a big fan of cutting people out. I mean, setting firm boundaries with people who are egocentric and they tend to feed off of your compassion. It's bye-bye. I mean, it hurt. Yeah, I have to deal with my shame and my sense of guilt for setting firm boundaries for that person, but I find long-term best for me. Yeah. That's a good point too. Okay.
But if you're not feeling your own boundaries or respecting them, it's not compassion anymore.
Yeah.
And you lose the compassion for yourself. So we can't talk about compassion.
Yeah.
It's midlife or those with something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so these are really good questions, no? So we can really see how complex it is, no, to regulate closeness and distance and to see where am I, where's the other person. But I think in all these questions, again, we can come back to this basic sense of we want to feel connected. We want to love, we want to feel loved. Yeah. It's tricky, but it's worth going there. Yeah. And we have a lot of good resources in our bodies and minds to engage in that. Yeah. So thank you so much once again. And I'll hang out a little bit more. So if you want to come up to me and chat a little bit more, I'll be available. And yeah, otherwise, if you want to chat and also make yourself available to others so we can end the more formal part of this evening and engage in a more informal way, right? So looking forward to seeing you again. And thanks so much. Thank you for coming. Have a beautiful night. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, everyone. We're going to keep the space open for a little bit longer. Again, the toilet is in the back. The smoking room is here. The bar is still open, and yeah, feel free to stay.
And join the society also.
Yeah. Oh, it's not shown.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, anyways. If we manage, we'll put up the members link.
Vielleicht muss ich das hier beenden.
Ja,